Hey everybody, Scoots. And this is a new patron kind of. This is a test. So just if you're watching this definitely won't probably misspeak and have some inaccurate info. But I'm a patron of Rob has a podcast, and I saw he does this, or he's trying to do it once a month. And I thought, oh, this is a perfect opportunity to kind of combine office hours on a monthly basis focused on new patrons and new patron questions. So if you're a long-standing patron or you don't have any questions, feel free to put your questions in the chat. But if you're a new patron, that's what I'm really focused on, and kind of going over some of the benefits and the setups, and answering. There was two questions that got posted when I posted it, and kind of the key things. I definitely repeat these things. So even if you're a new patron, you might have a chance to learn some best practices and these are all so that you can get the most out of the Patreon. There is no have tos or musts, but I've been doing this a long time now, and I talk to Patreon a lot, and I support a lot of people on Patreon. So it definitely comes from the best practices of all of those experiences. So let's jump in with the two questions that got posted, and then I'll go through the Patreon awards. If you're a patron and you're watching this, click over to YouTube and post in the chat, or you could post it right on the Patreon page, and hopefully I'll get a alert of it and I can refresh and answer your question. But the first question was from Ainsley, who asked, would I consider doing a podcast or two on TV shows? Disjointed, Kim's Convenience. Also, can you do more Doctor Who episodes, or maybe crossover episodes like Professor Atwood's Adventures, or have Ray do them? So it's a couple different questions. Down the road, Ainsley. So, and this is kind of hard to imagine because the podcast puts people to sleep and is so free and easy. But I actually record stuff, especially the TV episodes, way, way, way ahead of time and plan it out way ahead of time. So to answer the Doctor Who question, there are Doctor Who episodes coming in 2022. I think I've got all of the TV stuff recorded for what year is this? 2021, unless Mandalorian starts up. But even then, it would be I'd be making adjustments. I have thought about doing like pilot type stuff on Patreon. So doing like a one-off about Kim's Convenience or something could be possible next year. Right now we're focused. So those are possible. And it's something I've thought about, is like doing, as we're able to add more Patreon only content, but the stuff that goes into the free feed and even the stuff that goes in the Patreon feed, it does on our end just take a lot of planning. So yeah, those are all things I'm working into the planning. So yeah, that's possible. Let me just check. My phone just buzzed. So Doctor Who is coming. I'll run through the schedule right now. Like right now we're finishing up, or on Patreon, I think we just finished up Clues was the last TNG episode. And that was a run of, I think, 7 TNG episodes. Then we're going to do season 2 of The Good Place, which is it's recorded on my end. It's still being edited, but the first couple episodes are edited. So those will start running after, let's see, I think maybe you'll get the first episode on Wednesday, because Lady Witchbeard 7 comes out tonight in the Patreon feed. And then we'll finish up season 2 of The Good Place. I think there's 7 episodes that cover that whole season. And then we'll go to Great British. The tentative schedule is to go to Great British Bake Off after The Good Place. So like I said, it kind of depends on when the Mandalorian season comes out, but I don't think it's scheduled to come out. And I know Book of Boba Fett's coming out, but I am not comfortable. I'm not planning on doing coverage of that right away. So the tentative schedule will be to have Great British Bake Off, do a run and then it probably would be Doctor Who after that, because it kind of like the feel of like that kind of cadence, I guess, of a comedy, then something a little bit different. Great British Bake Off in these cases, that's kind of soothing and chill, and then sci-fi. So that will probably be the cadence. Like we have two Great British, so we have all of the. That's how far ahead we're working. Is like all of the Good Place stuff is recorded. Some of it is edited, and then 2 episodes of Collection 5, if you're watching on Netflix, um, of Great British Bake Off, which was, I think we did Collection 6 last time, is what we're doing. So I just recorded Biscuits Week, which was week 2 this week. And then we'll move on from there. So that's what we have so far. And yeah, it's just a matter of planning, and it is in just a matter of like time. And right now, the tentative plan for Patreon only episodes is to try to get enough support to keep the Ray episodes going. And the same thing with the Great British Bake Off episodes. It's like I want to get start recording those ones similar to what we did last time. And then we have 12 Ray episodes recorded, and then kind of like a schedule. Are we going to move forward with those or not? And then some of the Great British Bake Off episodes, then I'll start kind of looking at, do we have enough patrons to keep making other Patreon exclusive content, or enough Patreon support in the $10 and $20 level to start doing kind of one-off or ideas like that. Like, hey, let's just do one episode. We would call it like Sleep With Me Pilot or something, and then be like, oh, if that really worked, we could do it. I mean, I already have 2 episodes sketched out. So then doing other shows or stuff would be possible. Let me just pop into the chat. Hey, Christiana. Christiana says, welcome to new patrons. Okay, let me answer this question and then get to these new patron. David says, big thank you. TNG podcasts are a godsend. Can we have the story starts in the Patreon summary like in the other podcasts for those who like to skip ahead? David, at this time, I can't, like, we put out the story only episodes specifically so that for people that want to listen to the story only episodes, and the ones in the public feed are just a general, like because the public episodes are so variable. I just put 20 minutes in there is like a guesstimate on people that want to skip ahead. But your best bet for your case, and this will go into the kind of next questions, is to just use the story only episodes. So I'm going to use that as a bridge for all new patrons that are watching, or all patrons that are watching. First, I'm going to take a sip. If you haven't watched one of these videos, it's always about, what am I drinking? I just had my lunch, so I'm taking a drink of 0-calorie generic cherry cola, which we picked up, and it's actually not bad. This is the Safeway brand. And it's not terrible, especially for a caffeine kick on a Sunday, as opposed to sugared soda. I would say it's better than not terrible. It's drinkable. So, and it has a little caffeine kick. It has a cherry, has a little bit of a cola flavor. Okay, so new patrons, all patrons that are watching. So this is new, so I'm trying to figure out what the best way to do this is. Okay, so if you're a $5 or $10 patron, in this Patreon post is the videos of what do you get as a $5 and a $10 patron. I'm still working on the video for the $20 patrons because I'm trying to figure out some new ideas for $20 patrons, but also the key things, if you're a $20 patron, is the same thing for the rest of the patrons. Make sure you're getting your messages from Patreon, because I send out a message every month. Hey, when's your birthday? Because that's like the most popular $20 patron perk, is a birthday message. And then a lot of the perks are similar to the $10 level, except for the Ray episodes. So watch those videos, whether you're a $5 or $10 patron, because they just have a lot of good information in there. But you say, hey, what do I get as a patron? Watch those videos. The most, like, and again, it is, I know some people choose to do things different ways, and I want to respect people's choices. But if you are a patron, I can't say it strongly enough that one, if you don't have the patron feed set up, you're definitely missing out on a lot of amazing content that we put a lot of hard work into, work that's paid for already by the patrons. So it's not extra work that's like it's work that's paid for. People that are working on it are paid. So that's a nice thing. It's sustainable work, or work we're trying to figure out to make sustainable in Ray's case. But so if you're not consuming the extra content on Patreon, please don't miss out. And it is definitely mathematically the people that listen to Patreon content on a page on the page in a podcast app are the patrons that stay patrons. There's been people that are the patrons the longest. Now there's patrons that just support the show and just want to support the show, and that's it. But for the most part, the math shows that patrons that listen on a podcast app to the Patreon feed are just more satisfied. And I'm going to kind of explain that. I'm going to explain how to do that. It's very easy, but yeah, it's not easy for everybody. And with all tech, there can be bugs, and I totally understand that. But I just don't want you missing out. And I hear it. I get emails from pages. Well, I don't need to listen, or I don't want to listen, or I don't want to take the time. It's for you, not for me. Like, it is for you. If you fall asleep to the show and you haven't listened to the Patreon feed at any level, there is so much more stuff in there. There's secret messages on the top of every episode for patrons. Like, even if you decide, you know what, it's not for me, like, I'd just rather support the show or listen to the free show, just try it out, because it's fun. I mean, I have fun recording the Patreon-centric messages, and I even got a message from somebody recently that said, hey, why don't you take the time to thank your patrons on the podcast? And I was like, maybe they just don't have the patron feed set up, because I have a secret message on the top of every patron episode. But also it was a good reminder to be like, okay, let me pay extra attention to those messages. Okay. So that's one, is like, don't miss out on the Patreon content. Two is the Patreon content and the podcast. And again, this isn't meant to sound exclusive or to say it is a should, but it is to say, if you trust me to put you to sleep, maybe think about, could you trust Scoots with this advice? The show really is designed to be listened to in a podcast app, the free podcast and the Patreon content. And it's just like how the podcast is designed. Like, someone makes a movie to be seen in a movie theater, or someone makes a TV show with the idea that people are going to be watching it on a television, or someone makes something for a whole season drop on Netflix versus a week-to-week show. Like, those inform the choices the creator is making for the audience. And so the podcast is best consumed in a podcast app. It's how everything, all of the work we do into the show, it's like, it could be consumed. Like you can watch a movie at home, and a lot of people have setups that are close to a theater, or you can watch a movie on your phone. So you can do it another way, but everything is designed. And a lot of the problems that people have, it's either the podcast app they're using, or you're not listening in a podcast app. You can just get so much out of the show, whether it's the free podcast or the Patreon content, in a good podcast app. So that's two, is like, one, don't miss out on the bonus content, but two, do not miss out on the bonus content in a podcast app. And three is, don't miss out on the bonus content in a quality podcast app. And again, this doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. You can make a slow transition, and you can try it out. So, and you could try out your Patreon rewards in more than one podcast app. But a quality podcast app, I'm only going to point out two, but there's a lot out there. There are the two that I use on a daily basis: Overcasts, which is only on Apple, and Pocket Casts, which is on Android and Apple and smart speakers, and you can use it on your desktop. But both those apps allow you to search in the feed. So you load up a podcast and you say, "Lady, I just want to find the Lady Witchbeard stuff." They allow you to make playlists. They allow you to speed up or slow down the podcast. You could start the podcast at a later point to jump back to the earlier question. And you could set sleep timers. So, but the hugest things are the ability to search in the feed. That's what the biggest differentiator for me is, being able to search in the feed versus other podcast apps that are pretty good. But if you can't search in an individual podcast feed, like as an example, I went for a run today. I listened to this podcast called Podcast The Ride. Justin McElroy was on Podcast The Ride as a guest talking about this new Disney product. And if it was 2 years from now, I said, man, like, wasn't Justin McElroy on Podcast The Ride once? And I couldn't search in the feed for that. Or I say, this was his first time on the show, but it'd be like, oh, or was Len Testa ever on this Podcast The Ride? I can search in the feed to see that. It can be confusing. And if you're confused by all this, I'm going to walk through where to start. Again, this is the first time I'm doing this new Patron setup. So if you get more questions, post them on the thing or whatever. So, okay. Whew. That's rant over. So where do you start? If you're new or you've been a patron for a while, how do you go through those three things? I want to listen to the bonus content. I want to listen in a podcast app, and I want to listen in a high quality podcast app. Okay, where do you start? You start with your device, and you might listen on a phone. You might listen on a tablet. You may listen on a computer and a browser or a smart speaker. Right now, and again, I'm not trying to be exclusive, but the majority of patrons and listeners listen on either a phone or a tablet. So if you're listening on a phone or a tablet, all you do is you go to your app store, whether it's the Google Play Store, the Apple App Store, search for Pocket Casts, or in the Apple App Store, you could also search for Overcast. You could also Google and talk to people outside of this chat of like, what podcast app do you use? But download those apps and load them on your device. And again, apps, for the most part, like, just start playing around with it. You could listen to the free feed and check it out. Type in Sleep With Me, subscribe to the free podcast in those apps. Just get to know the apps. And then we'll go into how do you connect it. But the key is just to try it out. And again, another reason to use a podcast app, a thing that's popular with patrons, is just some patrons like to listen to the free show and the Patreon show side by side, which you can do in podcast apps. Okay, so now you've checked out a quality podcast app. Maybe you already have your preferred podcast app as well. Great news. You could connect the Patreon bonus content in most podcast apps. There's some that are closed systems like Spotify or Stitcher. They're closed systems. They don't allow outside content. So you can't connect the Patreon content to them. So let's make sure your bonus content is set up in a podcast app. Now, before, I don't want to get ahead of myself. One of the things you need to make sure if you're a patron is that you have your login information and that you log into Patreon on a regular basis. This is how you find out about these videos and stuff. But that can be a big hurdle. And I totally understand, because I use a password manager, but if you don't have your login information, you could get kind of stuck in that loop of like having to reset your password and all that. But you're always going to need your login information. So my advice moving forward from this video is to either use a password manager and or use a regular login that you use, whether it's your email or some sort of system, and like some sort of password system, so that you just know what your password is. So you don't have to look it up every time you want to log in. Like if you use a password manager, it's going to come up, hey, do you want like like whether it's one built into your browser or your phone. And again, this might be overcomplicated. That's my middle name, but make sure you can log into Patreon before you get started. Okay, so you can log into Patreon. You just take your phone. Oh wait, this is my practice phone, but it was just charging. So let's see. I got to open it up. It's on airplane mode. Okay, so this is an older phone too, so this is always good practice. So you'll open up the browser on your phone. On an iPhone, you may use Safari or you may use Chrome. On an Android phone, you may use Chrome or you may use something else. Or I mean, you may use some other browser, but the browser is the thing you use to get it, like go to websites. Okay, so I don't see a browser on this phone because I haven't used it in so long. So this is good practice for me too. I don't have Chrome on here. Oh, interesting. I mean, I guess this phone hasn't been updated. So I guess I'll open up Safari. You open up Safari on your phone and you type in www. I don't even know if you need to do that, but Sleep With Me podcast. And you'll see it in the video, the post here. Me podcast.com/ Patron, Patron, feed, FEED. But then mine has an extra. Okay. Oh, see, this isn't easy here. Okay, sleepwithmepodcast.com. See, this isn't easy for anybody. I haven't used this phone though. Okay, there we go. .com/ Okay. Then you click go or go whatever. It'll bring you to patreon.com. You'll log in. And like I said, I have password manager, so it's logging me in right now. Oh, and I have I don't want to overcomplicate things, but I also have to authenticate. So it's good. So after you log in, it's going to bring you to a screen that says Acast, and you'll click allow. But I got to wait for this text to come through. So now I got to grab my other phone. But so then you'll click allow, and then it'll bring you to a list of popular podcast apps. Yeah, like I said, this is work on the fly here. And I'm trying to protect my privacy. It's the other thing. Okay. So you'll click allow, and then you'll see a list of popular podcast apps. Oh boy. And then you just pick your podcast app from the list. And again, you can pick as many apps as you want. Like, okay, sorry. So I highly recommend using two-factor authentication. It just takes longer to do a video about it, which means that everything double checks that you're really you. It sends you a text. Okay, so then this is what the Acast screen looks like. You click allow. Then you wait. And then you'll see a list of popular podcast apps. And then you just click the app you want to use, and then you wait for it to load. And then you click subscribe or follow or whatever. And then you'll have, I don't know how to, I can't show my phones during just because people are, it's a Sunday. But so then you'll have it in your podcast app, and then you can listen and you can play around with stuff. That really got us sidetracked. So this is something to work on. I have more concise videos about it in the thing of how to get it set up. But the only thing you need to remember, or the most important things, are sleepwithmepodcast.com/patron feed. And then all of the videos of how to get this stuff set up with screenshots, because I edit out all of the privacy stuff, is sleepwithmepodcast.com/patron help. And they go through walking you through the setup. But that's it. Then once you have stuff set up in your podcast app, you're getting the Patreon feed. You can have it in more than one app. So you can say, oh, wow, I really do like Overcast, or, oh, wow, I really do like Pocket Cast, or, you know what, I just like Apple Podcasts and I'm going to stick with it. All those are valid choices. But then just play around with the other apps, I guess, is my main thing. I'm trying to think. I got to hop off. Let me just refresh to see if there's any questions, but I'll be doing this every month. So even if you're a long-term patron and you have a question, and the easiest thing to do is either message me or message Patreon support. Like if you can't get into your account, like you forgot your password and you're locked out, sleepwithmepodcast.com/patron support. Send them a message. You just click, you're a patron, you're having an issue logging in, be like, hey, I can't log into my account, or hey, I'm not getting the text. Patreon support is there to help. And that all that support's already paid for as part of your membership. I don't know. I think that's it for this video that I wanted to cover. I mean, are the most important, those things that I keep. sleepwithmepodcast.com/patron feed, sleepwithmepodcast.com/patron help, and sleepwithmepodcast.com/patron support. And just getting it set up in a podcast app, it's going to be so much better of an experience. And yeah, there might be an adjustment curve, but it's just, the podcast app is way more suited to falling asleep, because you can turn off the screen and you can set a sleep timer and you can kind of control the other stuff. And I can see it in the statistics, like on the free feed. I don't know if I've ever looked on the patron feed, or if I have the ability to even look, but I can see like people set their sleep timers for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, and then people that listen all night long, or listen to episodes over and over again. Yeah, the podcast app is just way more suited to that. And if you're new to podcast apps and stuff, watch all the videos on our Tuesday tutorial page, because you'll just get to, watch the videos first, and then go on YouTube and just search Pocket Casts or Overcasts, or how to use Pocket Casts or how to use Overcast. And it'll help you. I mean, that's just how I learn now. And it does take some time. Like I'm trying to learn different things, and it's not easy. So I'm not saying it's not easy. I'm just looking out for your best experience, especially falling asleep to the show. Thank you, everybody, for the support. Thanks, Natalie and Christiana, for posting in the chat. And you could always message me through Patreon. Is always the best way to get me, or come to these office hours. And I'll talk to you all soon. Good night.